Welcome to the basement. Just down here because it's fairly quiet. Um, this is going to be my last video for this semester. We'll start up again like a little bit before spring in a couple weeks, but I figured I probably don't need to record every single day of the break and give myself a little bit of freedom so from having to pause at the end of every day to talk for a little bit. I'm just not going to be as much relevant stuff, so um this will be my little recap as opposed to talking about today. Um, so just as I was going through my older videos, one thing that stood out to me immediately is that I look much better with longer hair and a little bit of facial hair. Even though it doesn't show up a lot because it's so blonde, I look better with the longer hair. I'm sure my mother would disagree to some extent because she at least likes to see it shaped, but just I did not like shorter hair at all. Um, One thing that I noticed going back through was when you talking about groceries back at the very start, because it was quite expensive, and groceries ended up just not being something I used almost all year. Like during the first week, oh, there goes the train. During the first week, you know, none of the places were open, and so cooking was fairly relevant, and I made like 3 things, and then I like almost never had to cook again because it was just I had a food credit for every single day. Plus, when I worked, I got to eat that day, and I'd have one really big meal at one of the I guess buffet places, and then I was just good for the day. And so it was kind of funny looking back and hearing me talk about groceries and talking about cooking and going, oh yeah, huh. Some of my groceries ended up going bad actually, just because I never had a use case for them ever. So, one other thing, looking back at those really early videos, was me trying to find good spots to record. And, at the start I had a couple of locations I was really trying, like the cemetery. Cemetery was very cool, very pretty, but, I just got a lot less practical to bike out there at the end of every day just to record for like 3 minutes. And plus, as much as I liked some of my spots, they were never actually really private. There was like one in every 3 videos out in the cemetery, someone was walking by. It was probably more than that even. But yeah. So I ended up recording a lot of those just in my room. Which, a little disappointing. But cemetery is still nice to go through. It's not as common anymore. I have like a whole list that I'm looking at over here of notes I took just so it's like little talking points to go over. Um, I guess if I want to talk about church stuff just for a moment, I never like quite got the word stuff figured out. That's probably something we're gonna have to. I might have a better chance of figuring that out again once the semester starts, just because there'll probably like be explicit notifications again that I wasn't paying attention to the first time. But church up there, honestly, not too different from down here. I mean, the ward is generally younger, but it's like the ward down here, especially after them. They changed the ward. What was the word? The range in which people were pulled to go to each ward, but so there's a different mix of people there. It's the same set of lessons that are always established every week, just with people you don't really know and kind of recognize. So, yeah. Some of the lessons were good and enjoyable to listen to or talk about from time to time, but it was always just very predictably the same thing, the same lesson that you checked this this morning or the day before online, because that's just the script that everyone uses no matter where you go. Um, Classes were always interesting. They were all lectures, effectively, and I ended up missing a few of them due to just like sleeping in, like especially on nights where I stayed up really early. But a lot of the lectures were enjoyable. I had good teachers, even on subjects that I sucked at. Um, and the exams were somewhat difficult. I don't know. Biology was really easy. I don't think I ever really studied for biology beyond just like going over some of the like study guides for like half an hour. Um, Chemistry was a little bit more stressful, and there was some stuff I had to study for that, and some I definitely had some trouble with. But trigonometry was definitely my biggest killer, because even though I could take it multiple times, you'd only do it once a day, and I'd have to dedicate like a whole week to every exam, except for those last two. Getting those back to back, felt awesome. But yeah, that one was pretty tough. Um, I did a fair bit of, working with the bike because that was my main mode to get everywhere even after it started snowing. Um, the bike was both my best tool and my most tedious project because, most of the time it worked to some acceptable degree and I could get from here to there in 5 minutes. It was really convenient. But it also had several times that it broke down and I had to spend a couple days fixing it. Um, there is a non-zero chance that I get a new bike for Christmas, which I they'll probably be nice. I'm probably downplaying it, and then if I actually get a bike and it works really well, then I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was going with that old bike for so long. It was having so many problems. I didn't even notice this, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I did learn a lot doing repairs on that though, because that was like once every 3 weeks going in, figuring something out, and working with the threads and gears and all the tools. Like I've had a couple. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, because it was Saturday. Mom had me help with like fixing on some shower heads, and it was super easy. It was threading and tightening stuff, and I've been doing that like all semester for the bike. So, all the repairing stuff came in handy, I guess you can say. Uh, Travel in general was okay, because if I ever had to go down to Logan, I could take the bike downhill and be really fast, and that was great. The buses were slower, but they got uphill a lot faster than I could, and the drivers are always very polite, and you you got where you need most of the time. There's a couple times that I were not quite as great, generally because like my timing was off or it was past 9 and I hadn't quite internalized that that's when the buses are off for the day, or it was a Sunday, which is the same case. Yeah, after 9 and on Sundays they just weren't active, and that got me a couple of times. Um, Having Paul as a roommate has been very interesting. Um, most of the time it's just we chatter back and forth a bit, and we'd always leave the window open to keep it cold. Um, which now basically everywhere else is unbearably warm, except for, like the basement most of the time. Basement down here tends to be pretty good. But like even in the rest of the dorm, it wasn't. It tended to be a little warm. I'm getting sidetracked though. Paul was a real interesting roommate. most time we'd kept to ourselves, and occasionally we'd talk and stay up till like 2 or 3 in the morning, just going back and forth as we lay in our beds. Of course, Paul also ended up making some really good friends, and I somehow, perhaps by a miracle, made zero friends all semester. I have like a couple associates now from like work who I know the names of, but yeah, I never ended up making friends with anyone, which is my own fault. Um, Getting the laptop. The laptop was really nice. I know I had some trouble with it at the start because I accidentally broke it, but the laptop has been very useful, and I end up, even being back here where I have my normal desktop, I end up just using the laptop because I'm so used to it and its controls and where everything's set up on it now. Um, I probably spent more time doing like homework and writing on it than like video games, but not by a large margin. I played quite a few video games, mostly Skyrim, I think, because I figured out how to change how the game functioned with different modifiers, and that ended up being a lot of fun. Um, I think roommates in general, which I kind of skipped over, was interesting because there was Paul and Theron who got there first, and he like was a mostly quiet guy who stayed up fairly late and who played a bunch of first-person shooters on his really fancy computer setup, and he played guitar from time to time, which was fun to hear through the walls. And the other three were all pretty similar because they were returned missionaries who were fairly um, I was going to say fairly similar, but I already mentioned that because Bill actually knew the church times and would go to the earlier um, ward meeting, and then they'd be gone for basically the rest of Sunday, other than coming back to change into their more casual attire at some point. They all cooked from time to time. They were all much better at it than I was. And we'd talk occasionally, but I think the only time we all really hung out was when we played a board game together at like the start of the semester. Um, hmm. I guess if I had just like a couple other notes, the other things I have written down here are Hail Mary and the Damn Aggie. So just go over Hail Mary real quick. I started reading it pretty early in the semester, and there's like 2 chapters of it left because I'd stay up super late doing homework or getting distracted with some other stuff, and then I wouldn't read it, and I'd put it off, and then I would pick it up and I'd read like 5 chapters in a row. Cause it's such a great book. But I've got like 2 chapters left. I'll probably finish it by like Wednesday, just if I actually remember, because it is a really good book, and I found out that like both it and another movie I've been really wanting to watch because it's been going through development for like a couple years now, which is Iron Lung. They're both premiering in March, and so those might end up being something I see if I can watch somehow while I'm up in Logan. Um, yeah, and Damn Aggie was something I did at like the very start of the year, and there's a couple of people, most of them who I haven't kept any level of contact with. But that was a fun memory, is going out into all the different reservoirs. Yeah. One thing I think I noticed the most watching back all my videos is my little outro changed basically never. It was like slight variants of itself, changing the order in which I said things. But it was always, have a good night, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye-bye was always because I realized it'd take a second for my hand to reach over to the camera, and so I had to, like, one last thing I wanted to say before I turned off the camera, like after a second of me bringing my hand over. But I think next semester I want to have something a little bit more coordinated than just me automatically throwing out the same 4 lines. But I think for now I'm going to keep to that same little bit. Thank you for watching. Probably not all of these, but for watching some of these. I hope you all have a wonderful few weeks of winter, for some of you winter break. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. I love you all. And I will see you probably like January 3rd or 4th, because that's when I have to start working again. Have a great year. Bye-bye.